Emma always seemed like an ordinary woman. People who saw her for the first time would think she was quiet, unassuming, and completely like any other person in the crowd. She had no flashy style, no dramatic gestures, and no loud personality that demanded attention. Her hair was always neatly tied back. Her clothes were simple and comfortable, and her smile was soft, polite, but reserved. At first glance, there was nothing about her that stood out. She didn't talk much about herself, and when asked about her life, she would give brief, careful answers. This made her seem even more ordinary, even forgettable to those around her. She worked in a small office downtown, one of many employees quietly completing their work day by day. Her job was not glamorous or exciting. She handled paperwork, organized schedules, and helped with small, practical tasks. To her colleagues, Emma was helpful but invisible, someone who kept the office running smoothly without ever drawing attention to herself. When others discussed weekend adventures, hobbies, or exciting plans, Emma would listen, nod politely, and occasionally add a short comment. People often thought of her as shy or even timid, assuming she had a simple, uneventful life. What people didn't know was that Emma's ordinary appearance was just a mask. Beneath the calm, quiet exterior was a woman with a history that very few could imagine. She had lived a life filled with challenges, discipline, and courage, but she never felt the need to tell anyone about it. To her, life had taught her that true strength did not need to be shown off. It was something you carried quietly, in your actions, your confidence, and the way you held yourself, not in loud words or dramatic gestures. Her coworkers, naturally, were unaware of this hidden side of her. They didn't see the way Emma's eyes would light up when solving a problem quickly, or the confidence in her movements when she completed a task efficiently. To them, she simply appeared organized and polite. Nothing extraordinary. On most days, she would arrive at the office early, complete her work without complaint, and leave quietly at the end of the day. There was no drama, no attention-seeking, and no reason for anyone to look twice. She seemed almost invisible, the kind of person you could pass by without a second thought. Even in her personal life, Emma preferred simplicity. She didn't feel the need for expensive clothing, fancy dinners, or social media attention. She enjoyed reading, hiking alone in the mornings, and spending quiet evenings reflecting on her life. Many people might have mistaken this for a lack of ambition or excitement, but in reality, it was a choice. Emma valued depth over showiness and preferred meaningful experiences over shallow impressions. She had learned early on that appearances could be deceiving, and she had mastered the art of letting people believe what they wanted, while keeping her true self hidden until the right moment. Her quiet demeanor also had an unexpected effect. It made others underestimate her. People often assumed she was fragile, timid, or lacking confidence. They would speak to her in a tone meant to be slightly condescending, testing her limits with small jokes or subtle mockery. Emma never reacted outwardly. Instead, she observed quietly, noting people's behavior and reactions. She found their assumptions amusing, a silent game that she alone understood. While they laughed and whispered about her being ordinary, she knew the truth. They had no idea who she really was, and that truth was powerful. There were moments when her past would subtly peek through, though most people didn't notice. The way she handled stressful situations with calm precision, the ease with which she carried herself even when tired, and the confidence in her actions all hinted at a life far different from the one they imagined. But Emma was patient. She had learned long ago that revealing too much too soon often led to misunderstanding. People needed time to see the real her, and she was happy to let them remain in their assumptions, until the perfect moment arrived to show them otherwise. In essence, Emma's life was a careful balance. On the surface, she seemed simple, quiet, and ordinary. She blended into her environment with ease, allowing others to underestimate her. But beneath that ordinary exterior was a woman shaped by discipline, courage, and experiences that would astonish anyone if they knew the truth. Every smile she gave, every polite answer, and every silent observation was part of her secret strength. Emma understood something important. Appearances can be deceiving, and real power often lies in what people don't see. And so, she went about her days, quietly living, quietly observing, and quietly preparing for the moment when the world would finally see the real Emma. A moment that would change everything for those who had laughed at her, assuming she was ordinary. Life in the office carried on as usual, and Emma's quiet, unassuming nature continued to make her an easy target for light teasing. At first, it was small things. Co-workers joking about her calm demeanor, her choice of plain clothes, or the way she seemed content to sit quietly while everyone else chatted. They didn't mean any real harm. In fact, they thought they were being friendly, playful even. But there was a subtle edge to their words, a sense that they were testing her limits, trying to poke fun at someone they assumed was ordinary, someone who could not possibly surprise them. Whenever someone made a joke about her, Emma smiled politely. Her lips curved gently, but her eyes revealed nothing. Not amusement, not anger, not embarrassment. She listened to their teasing with a calmness that only made them more confident in their assumptions. "She's so quiet and simple," they would whisper behind her back, shaking their heads and laughing softly. "She doesn't seem like someone who could handle anything exciting or difficult. She's ordinary, plain, nothing special." At team meetings, Emma would contribute when necessary, offering concise and practical suggestions. Nothing flashy, nothing dramatic, just clear, efficient answers. Some colleagues began to see her as predictable, someone whose life was probably as simple as her speech and gestures. During lunch breaks, they would share stories of weekend adventures, vacations, or exciting hobbies, while Emma quietly ate her meal, occasionally nodding or giving a brief comment. They assumed she had nothing interesting to share, nothing beyond the mundane routines of daily life. The teasing started to grow bolder. One coworker made a comment about her quiet little life, laughing as though it were a joke at her expense. Another teased her about her simple wardrobe, suggesting she should try dressing like normal people for once. Some of the younger employees would smirk and whisper, comparing Emma to the more outgoing personalities in the office. They laughed openly, confident that Emma could not possibly take offense. They believed they had seen all there was to see. Emma noticed it all. She noticed the whispers, the sideways glances, the little smirks that appeared when she walked past. But instead of reacting, she simply observed. She found a quiet satisfaction in their assumptions, a secret amusement that only she understood. In her mind, she played a little game. She let them underestimate her. She let them think they had figured her out, and she waited. She had learned long ago that people rarely saw the full picture at first glance. They loved to label, to categorize, and to judge, and in doing so, they revealed their own narrow thinking. Despite the teasing, Emma never showed any irritation. She remained polite, professional, and calm, which made her coworkers even more convinced that she was harmless, ordinary, and easy to dismiss. She didn't fight back. She didn't need to. Her calm presence was her secret weapon. People loved to underestimate those who seemed quiet, believing that silence meant weakness. Emma knew otherwise. True strength was quiet. True courage was steady. And she had learned to carry both without needing to announce them to the world. Her coworkers' assumptions about her life were completely wrong. They thought they understood her because they saw a calm woman with simple tastes, but they had no idea about the discipline, courage, and experiences that shaped her. They had no idea that Emma had once faced challenges that most people could never imagine. Challenges that required not just courage, but skill, endurance, and a deep inner strength. These were the things she carried quietly with her, hidden behind the polite smiles and soft voice. Even as the teasing continued, Emma found it almost funny. It was like watching a predictable play unfold over and over. People thought they were clever, that they were seeing something about her that others couldn't. But in reality, they were only seeing the surface. And the deeper truths of her life, the strength, the courage, and the history that made her extraordinary, remained hidden, safely beneath her ordinary appearance. Emma's response to the teasing was subtle, almost invisible. She never raised her voice. She never snapped or reacted dramatically. Instead, she listened, observed, and stored away each word, each look, and each laugh. She understood human nature well enough to know that people often reveal their true selves in moments of mockery or judgment. And while her coworkers thought they were enjoying harmless fun, Emma quietly appreciated the irony. They were laughing at someone far stronger than they could imagine. In truth, the teasing was harmless, but it also set the stage for something extraordinary. The office had grown used to thinking of Emma as ordinary, and this assumption was about to be challenged in a way they would never forget. Her calm demeanor, her quiet efficiency, and the polite smile they saw every day were not the whole story. The world they thought they knew about her was about to expand suddenly, dramatically, and unmistakably. Little did her coworkers know, the very traits they mocked, her quietness, her simplicity, her unassuming nature, were exactly what made her ready for the moment when she would reveal her true strength. Emma had lived her life with a patience and awareness that allowed her to wait for the perfect opportunity, and the teasing, the jokes, and the mockery were all part of the journey that led to that unforgettable reveal. And so, day after day, Emma continued in the office, quiet, polite, and seemingly ordinary, while secretly holding the key to a past that would shock those who assumed they knew her. She had learned that appearances could deceive, and the ordinary mask she wore was the perfect way to prepare for the moment when the world would finally see who she really was. Even though Emma's coworkers continued to tease her and assume she was ordinary, little hints of her past began to surface, though most people were too distracted by their assumptions to notice. Sometimes, when faced with a sudden problem, she reacted with surprising calmness and efficiency, handling the situation with a skill and confidence that seemed unusual for someone they considered simple. For instance, if a printer jammed or an important file went missing, Emma would step in quietly, assessing the situation with precision and resolving it in a way that left her coworkers stunned, even if they didn't fully understand why. It wasn't only her work that hinted at something deeper. Emma's body language occasionally betrayed a strength and discipline that contrasted with her quiet appearance. She moved with a sense of purpose that went unnoticed by most, a subtle grace that came from years of training and experience. Her posture was always straight, her movements deliberate, and her gaze steady. Small things that went unnoticed because people were too busy underestimating her. But these were not accidents. Emma carried herself in this way because it had become second nature, a reflection of the life she had lived before this quiet office existence. There were also moments when her coworkers caught small glimpses of something unusual, though they quickly brushed them off. A faint scar on her forearm, a glimpse of muscular definition beneath her sleeves, or the way she lifted heavy boxes with ease. All of these were subtle signs of a life far more intense than anyone realized. Some whispered to each other, questioning if there was more to Emma than met the eye, but most laughed and dismissed their curiosity, chalking it up to imagination or exaggeration. They preferred to cling to their original assumption. Emma was ordinary, quiet, and unremarkable. Emma herself found the situation quietly amusing. She had learned long ago that people rarely look deeper than what is immediately visible. Human nature, she had discovered, loved simplicity and predictability. If someone seemed calm, polite, and unassuming, they were automatically labeled as weak or ordinary. And so, she allowed people to believe what they wanted. The teasing, the jokes, and the whispered conversations only confirmed what she already knew. People often judge without seeing the full picture. Emma knew that her strength didn't need to be announced. It simply existed, ready for the right moment to be revealed. Her quiet life also provided her with a kind of freedom. Because no one expected much from her, she could move through the office without unnecessary scrutiny. She observed her colleagues closely, noticing how they interacted, what they valued, and how they reacted under pressure. While they thought they were watching her, she was learning about them. Her patience and observation skills gave her an understanding of human behavior that many would find impressive, though none of her coworkers would suspect it. Emma's apparent ordinariness was, in fact, a strategic advantage. At the same time, there were small personal routines that reminded her of her true self, the self that few had any idea existed. She would sometimes stretch quietly in the corner of the office, her movements precise and controlled, a habit that had been drilled into her through years of training. At home, she maintained a disciplined schedule of exercise, meditation, and reflection. She read books that challenged her mind, and she explored hobbies that tested her endurance and creativity. Her life outside the office was full of purpose, strength, and meaning, a stark contrast to the simple, quiet persona she displayed at work. Emma also carried with her a quiet sense of humor about the situation. She found it ironic that the very traits people mocked, her silence, her calm, her apparent simplicity, were the things that defined her real strength. The more they laughed and underestimated her, the more satisfied she felt internally. She knew something they didn't. Appearances were deceiving, and the story of her life was far richer, more dramatic, and more inspiring than anyone could imagine. Despite the teasing, Emma never felt the need to defend herself. She understood that revealing too much too soon could lead to misunderstanding or unwanted attention. Instead, she used her calm demeanor as a shield, letting her co-workers' assumptions reinforce the ordinary mask she wore. Little by little, she was planting the seeds of curiosity, preparing the environment for the moment when she would finally reveal the truth. And yet, Emma's patience was not passive. She was always alert, always ready to demonstrate competence and resilience when needed. The glimpses of her skill and strength that occasionally appeared, handling a technical problem, lifting a heavy item, or solving a tricky situation with calm precision, were intentional reminders, small hints of the extraordinary person beneath the ordinary exterior. Those who noticed these signs often felt confused or impressed but were never able to put the pieces together. The deeper Emma's co-workers assumed her life was simple, the more perfect the setup became for the eventual reveal. The teasing, the jokes, and the casual underestimation all served a purpose, even if no one in the office realized it. Emma's life was a study in contrasts. Outwardly ordinary, inwardly extraordinary. Quiet, yet capable of remarkable strength. Polite, yet prepared to astonish. By the time part 3 of her story unfolds, Emma had established a careful balance. She maintained her ordinary appearance, continued to endure subtle teasing, and observed her colleagues with keen interest. Yet beneath the surface, she carried a history of discipline, courage, and resilience that few could ever imagine. Every day was a quiet preparation, every moment of underestimation a small victory in her mind, building toward the day when she would reveal the truth. A day when her ordinary facade would be replaced by a reality that no one could ignore or underestimate. Emma's story at this stage is a lesson in patience, strategy, and the power of hidden strength. She reminds us that what we see is often only a fraction of the whole truth, and that real courage and capability can exist quietly, waiting for the perfect moment to be revealed. The day of the office event finally arrived, and it was something everyone had been looking forward to. A casual team-building gathering meant to celebrate recent successes and encourage coworkers to bond outside the usual office routine. There was a light, cheerful energy in the air, with people chatting about weekend plans, laughing at small jokes, and casually comparing their outfits for the occasion. It was a chance for the team to relax, enjoy themselves, and see each other in a slightly different light. For Emma, it was just another day, though she knew the gathering would create the perfect opportunity for a subtle reveal. Everyone had been asked to dress casually, and short sleeves were encouraged to make the event feel relaxed and summery. Most people used the occasion as an excuse to show off trendy clothing, flashy accessories, or carefully styled hair. Emma, however, approached it as she did everything else, with quiet thoughtfulness and simplicity. She wore a simple top that allowed ease of movement and comfort, a choice that reflected her personality and her focus on practicality over style. To anyone glancing at her, she seemed just as ordinary and unassuming as always. As the event began, her co-workers continued their light teasing, laughing at Emma's quiet demeanor and the simplicity of her outfit. "Look at Emma," one joked, nudging another. "She blends into the background like always." Another chimed in with a smirk. "Maybe she'll surprise us by bringing a book instead of talking to anyone." Laughter followed, with several people shaking their heads, confident that Emma's life was predictable and boring. Emma smiled politely at the teasing, a calmness in her expression that contrasted sharply with the playful chaos around her. In her mind, she was perfectly aware of the irony. Here she was, quiet and simple on the surface, while underneath, A life of extraordinary experience, discipline, and courage had shaped her. The teasing, the assumptions, the jokes, all of it was irrelevant to her. She had no need to prove herself to anyone. Yet she also knew the moment was near when they would finally see a glimpse of the truth. As the group mingled, some co-workers continued to make small jokes, nudging each other and whispering about Emma's ordinary life. But others began to notice small things. The way she moved with confidence, the ease with which she navigated the crowded space, or the quiet composure she maintained even amidst loud laughter and chatter. A few glanced at her more closely, sensing that perhaps there was more to Emma than the jokes suggested. Still, most dismissed these signs, too comfortable in their assumptions to consider that they might be wrong. Then, as the conversation flowed and the laughter continued, Emma decided it was the right moment to reveal a small but significant part of herself. Casually, as if adjusting her clothing without drawing much attention, she rolled up her sleeves. In an instant, the unexpected was revealed. A large, intricate Marine Corps tattoo stretched across her upper arm. The room fell silent. Laughter died, whispers stopped mid-sentence, and all eyes turned toward her. The tattoo was not just an ordinary piece of art. Its bold design symbolized courage, service, and dedication. A visual testament to experiences far beyond the ordinary life her co-workers had imagined. The detail was remarkable, and the meaning was unmistakable. Emma's calm and composed expression contrasted sharply with the sudden shock that rippled through the room. For the first time, her colleagues were forced to confront the reality that they had misjudged her completely. Shock quickly turned into a mix of curiosity and admiration. People who had laughed moments ago now stared in disbelief, unable to reconcile the quiet, simple Emma they thought they knew with the woman standing before them. Someone who had served in the Marines, someone who had faced challenges that required immense strength, courage, and discipline. The assumptions they had made so confidently, the jokes they had whispered behind her back, suddenly seemed naive and misguided. Emma remained calm, not saying a word to explain. There was no need. The tattoo itself spoke volumes, telling a story that words could not fully capture. It was a revelation that demanded respect, admiration, and reconsideration. Co-workers who had mocked her were now confronted with the undeniable truth. Appearances could be deceiving, and the quiet, ordinary woman they had underestimated had a history of extraordinary courage. Even as the room processed the surprise, Emma's thoughts remained steady. She had lived long enough to know that strength was not always loud or visible. True power often lay beneath the surface, revealed only when the time was right. The teasing, the jokes, and the underestimation had all been part of the journey, a series of small moments that made this reveal even more impactful. The shift in the atmosphere was immediate. Colleagues who had once whispered and laughed now looked at her with curiosity, respect, and perhaps a little awe. The playful energy of the room had transformed into a deeper recognition of Emma's true self. Someone capable, disciplined, and strong beyond what anyone had imagined. The simple gathering had become a turning point, an unexpected revelation that would forever change how she was perceived. As the event continued, Emma's co-workers were quieter, more thoughtful. Some tried to mask their surprise with polite conversation, while others couldn't hide their admiration. Emma herself remained composed, smiling gently but not seeking attention. She knew that respect earned through assumptions being shattered was more powerful than anything that could be demanded or explained. The casual office event, meant to celebrate teamwork and lighthearted fun, had inadvertently become the stage for Emma's quiet triumph. Her ordinary mask had held up perfectly until the moment was right, allowing the revelation of her true strength to be dramatic, unforgettable, and undeniable. And as the day continued, one thing was certain. No one would ever look at Emma the same way again. The moment Emma's sleeve revealed the Marine Corps tattoo, the entire room froze. Laughter and casual conversation came to an abrupt halt. Her co-workers, who had been joking and whispering moments ago, suddenly found themselves confronted with a truth they had never expected. The intricate design of the tattoo, with its bold lines and unmistakable symbolism, immediately conveyed a story of courage, dedication, and a life far beyond the quiet, ordinary persona they had assumed. Emma remained calm, her expression gentle yet steady, knowing that words were unnecessary. The tattoo itself spoke volumes. Shock rippled through the room. Some co-workers stared with wide eyes, mouths slightly open, unable to process what they were seeing. Others instinctively stepped back, as if the sudden realization had created a kind of invisible barrier between them and the woman they thought they knew. The casual teasing, the whispers about her ordinary life, even the little jokes they had made, all seemed trivial now. It was as if the entire perception of Emma had been rewritten in a single silent moment. The tattoo was more than ink on skin. It represented discipline, training, and experiences that demanded courage and resilience, qualities that Emma had cultivated over years of service in the Marine Corps. It told a story of facing danger, overcoming challenges, and mastering oneself in ways that most people could never imagine. Her co-workers had assumed that she lived a quiet, ordinary life, but the tattoo revealed that she had lived a life filled with extraordinary challenges, courage, and commitment. Some co-workers immediately felt a mixture of awe and respect. They realized that they had completely misjudged her. The woman they had laughed at, the one they had whispered about behind her back, was far stronger, braver, and more capable than they had ever guessed. Their earlier assumptions suddenly seemed foolish, and a subtle embarrassment settled in as they silently acknowledged the gap between their perception and reality. For others, the revelation triggered curiosity. Questions formed in their minds. How long had she served? What had she experienced in the Marines? What challenges had shaped her into the composed, confident woman standing before them? While they might not have been ready to ask directly, the tattoo sparked a new awareness. Emma's life was layered, her experiences profound, and her strength undeniable. Emma watched the reactions quietly, allowing the moment to unfold naturally. She had always understood the power of patience and subtlety. She didn't need to explain herself immediately. The presence of the tattoo alone told the story. The calm confidence she displayed in that instant amplified the effect. She had mastered the art of letting people underestimate her, only to reveal the truth at the precise moment when it would be most impactful. A few co-workers, still processing the shock, tried to hide their surprise with awkward smiles or casual conversation. But it was clear that the perception of Emma had shifted irreversibly. The woman they had assumed was ordinary was no longer someone to be taken lightly. Her quiet demeanor, her polite smiles, and her simplicity in appearance now carried a new weight, the weight of hidden strength and an extraordinary history. The energy in the room changed. The playful teasing that had defined previous interactions was replaced by thoughtful glances and respectful silence. People who had once whispered about Emma's simple life now found themselves reflecting on their own assumptions. They realized that they had judged based on appearances, ignoring the fact that true strength and courage are often hidden beneath calm exteriors. Emma's tattoo was not just a symbol of her service. It was a lesson to everyone present, a reminder that there is always more to a person than meets the eye. Emma's own demeanor remained unchanged. She didn't boast, she didn't issue a speech, and she didn't demand recognition. She simply allowed the revelation to speak for itself, confident that her quiet strength was more powerful than any words could convey. The reactions of her co-workers confirmed what she had known all along. People love to underestimate what they cannot immediately see, and true strength often emerges when least expected. Even as the initial shock began to fade, conversations shifted subtly. Colleagues who had previously teased her started asking questions with genuine interest, seeking to understand her experiences, her motivations, and the meaning behind the tattoo. Others simply observed in silence, absorbing the reality that Emma's life was far more extraordinary than anyone had imagined. The transformation was undeniable. The quiet, ordinary woman they had thought they knew was now a figure of respect and admiration. The moment also left a lasting impression on Emma herself. She felt a quiet satisfaction, not from proving people wrong, but from the subtle acknowledgement of her truth. She had lived her life with discipline, courage, and strength, and now those who had doubted her had glimpsed a part of that reality. The respect she received was earned not through words or confrontation, but through a simple, powerful revelation, a testament to the life she had lived and the person she had become. By the end of the gathering, Emma's coworkers had learned a lesson they would not forget. The teasing and underestimation of the past had been replaced with curiosity, admiration, and a deep recognition of the extraordinary within the ordinary. Emma's quiet confidence, combined with the bold revelation of her tattoo, had forever changed how they perceived her. What they had once dismissed as simplicity was, in fact, a quiet strength, and the woman they had underestimated had proven, without speaking a word, that she was far from ordinary. After the initial shock of seeing Emma's Marine Corps tattoo, the room slowly began to settle into a mix of awe, curiosity, and reflection. Her co-workers who had been laughing and teasing her just moments ago now found themselves in uncharted territory. They could no longer treat her as ordinary. The quiet woman they thought they understood so well was revealing layers of strength and experience that no one had expected. Conversations that had previously been casual and playful now shifted in tone, filled with curiosity and genuine interest. Some co-workers nervously approached Emma, unsure how to begin. I didn't know," one said softly, hesitating mid-sentence. Another asked, "How long were you in the Marines?" These were questions they would never have dared to ask before, out of either fear of overstepping or because they assumed she had a simple, ordinary life. But the tattoo had broken the barrier. It demanded recognition, demanded curiosity, and demanded respect. Emma responded with calm, modest answers, careful not to boast or overwhelm them with details. She understood that her story would speak louder than any grand explanation ever could. As they listened, her co-workers learned that her time in the Marines was not just a title or a memory, but a series of intense experiences that shaped her character. They heard about the discipline required to endure rigorous training, the teamwork needed to survive difficult situations, and the courage demanded in moments of real danger. Each story, though told simply and without exaggeration, painted a picture of a woman who had faced challenges most people could barely imagine. Emma's modesty made it even more compelling. Here was someone who had accomplished extraordinary things without needing applause or recognition. Some colleagues began to reflect on their own behavior. They remembered the jokes they had made, the casual mockery, and the assumptions they had held about her being ordinary. Embarrassment crept in as they realized how completely they had misjudged her. They had measured her by superficial appearances, her quiet nature, her simple clothes, her polite demeanor, without considering the depth of her experiences or the strength of her character. It was a humbling moment, a quiet lesson in perception and the danger of underestimating others. Others were filled with admiration. They marveled at the courage and resilience Emma had shown, at the strength it took to endure challenges they could not imagine. They saw her in a new light, no longer just a co-worker, but a person worthy of genuine respect and even inspiration. Conversations that had once been lighthearted now carried a sense of reverence, as if her presence alone demanded a different level of attention. Some colleagues, who had once been dismissive, now sought to understand her perspective, to learn from her experiences, and to connect with the real person behind the quiet exterior. Emma herself remained calm and composed, aware of the subtle transformation occurring around her. She did not flaunt her experiences, nor did she seek validation. Her strength had always been quiet, rooted in discipline and personal growth rather than recognition. Yet seeing her co-workers' reactions, the awe, curiosity, and respect, gave her a quiet satisfaction. She knew that her ordinary appearance had been the perfect shield, allowing her true self to reveal itself at exactly the right moment. As conversations continued, co-workers began to ask more detailed questions, curious about the meaning behind the tattoo itself. Emma explained simply that it was a symbol of service, courage, and commitment, a reminder of the experiences that had shaped her life. They listened intently, absorbing the significance not just of the tattoo, but of the life it represented. It was a story that could not be judged by appearance alone, and each word Emma spoke carried weight because it came from someone who had truly lived it. The shift in perception was profound. Those who had once dismissed Emma now treated her with a combination of respect and quiet awe. They realized that true strength is often invisible, that courage does not always announce itself, and that ordinary appearances can hide extraordinary realities. They began to see Emma not as a coworker to be teased, but as a person with depth, experience, and a resilience that was both humbling and inspiring. In that moment, Emma's coworkers also began to see something else: the value of observation and patience. They had assumed they understood her, but they had been wrong. They realized that people cannot always be measured by what is immediately visible, by quiet demeanor, modest clothing, or polite manners. There are depths, histories, and strengths that often remain hidden until the right moment. Emma's calmness, her unassuming nature, and her simplicity had all been part of a carefully maintained balance, allowing her true self to emerge in a way that was powerful and undeniable. By the end of the gathering, the atmosphere had changed entirely. The teasing and assumptions of the past had been replaced by curiosity, admiration, and a new level of respect. Emma's presence, quiet and composed, carried authority now, not through words, but through the undeniable evidence of her experiences and character. Her tattoo had become more than an image. It was a symbol of hidden strength, a revelation that taught her coworkers an unforgettable lesson about courage, resilience, and the danger of underestimating others. Emma walked through the remainder of the event with her usual calm grace, aware that her coworkers' perception of her had shifted forever. They would no longer see her as ordinary, no longer take her quietness for granted. She had not needed to shout, to boast, or to demand recognition. Her life, her experiences, and her quiet confidence had spoken for her. The room had witnessed the power of subtlety, patience, and the extraordinary hidden within the ordinary. In those hours, Emma's coworkers learned more than just her story. They learned a lesson in humility, awareness, and respect. They discovered that people are often far more complex and capable than they appear, and that true courage and strength are sometimes revealed in the quietest, most unexpected ways. Emma's tattoo had done more than show her past. It had transformed how everyone saw her, leaving a lasting impression that would never fade. After the initial shock of seeing Emma's Marine Corps tattoo, her coworkers slowly began to warm up to the idea of learning more about her life. Curiosity replaced the awkward silence, and genuine questions started to emerge. They wanted to know what her tattoo meant, what her time in the Marines had been like, and how someone so calm and unassuming could have such extraordinary strength. Emma welcomed the questions quietly, ready to share just enough to give them a glimpse of her experiences, without turning the conversation into a boastful display. She began by explaining the basic meaning of her tattoo. It was more than just an image. It was a symbol of dedication, courage, and commitment. Each line and design had a story behind it, representing challenges she had faced and the principles she had learned during her time in the Marines. As she spoke, her co-workers listened intently, realizing that this quiet, ordinary-looking woman had lived a life full of experiences most of them could never imagine. Her words were calm, but they carried weight, each one a testament to her discipline and resilience. Emma then shared a few stories from her time in service, carefully choosing ones that were inspiring without being too dramatic or overwhelming. She spoke about the training, the physical and mental challenges, and the teamwork required to overcome them. She described moments when courage wasn't about heroics, but about pushing through fear and doubt, supporting her fellow Marines, and staying true to her responsibilities even in the hardest circumstances. Her stories were simple, yet they painted a vivid picture of a life filled with courage, discipline, and determination. Her coworkers were amazed. They had never expected someone they assumed was ordinary to have such strength and depth. Some were wide-eyed with admiration, silently acknowledging the courage it must have taken to endure what she described. Others nodded thoughtfully, realizing how much they had underestimated her based on appearances alone. Every story Emma told challenged their assumptions, slowly replacing their old perceptions with a newfound respect. As the conversation continued, Emma shared the lessons she had learned during her service. She spoke about perseverance, the importance of teamwork, and the value of discipline in achieving goals. She emphasized humility and quiet strength, explaining that true courage often doesn't need recognition. It's something lived and felt, not announced. Her co-workers absorbed each word, realizing that the calm, polite woman they had once mocked had much to teach them about resilience and character. Some coworkers began to reflect on their own behavior. They remembered the jokes they had made, the teasing, and the underestimation. There was a quiet sense of embarrassment, but it was mixed with admiration and inspiration. They realized that they had judged Emma too quickly, focusing only on appearances instead of understanding her experiences. Her stories made them rethink not just their perception of her, but also their understanding of people in general, that sometimes the most extraordinary strength is hidden beneath the surface. Emma's modesty only amplified the impact of her stories. She never bragged or sought attention. She spoke calmly, simply, and honestly, letting the experiences themselves speak louder than any self-praise could. Her co-workers found themselves drawn to her words, captivated not just by what she had done, but by the quiet confidence and integrity she radiated. It became clear that her courage was not just physical, but emotional and mental as well, the kind of strength that quietly influences and inspires others without demanding recognition. As the afternoon continued, conversations shifted from curiosity to admiration. Some coworkers asked more personal questions, genuinely interested in her perspective and experiences. Others simply listened, taking in the quiet power of her presence. The teasing and assumptions of the past were completely replaced by respect and fascination. Emma had transformed not just how her coworkers viewed her, but also how they thought about strength, courage, and the hidden depths in people around them. By the end of the gathering, Emma's colleagues had learned several important lessons. They realized that appearances could be deceiving, that quietness and simplicity often mask extraordinary capability, and that true courage and resilience are measured not by showiness, but by action and character. Emma had shown them, without force or drama, that strength often exists quietly, waiting for the right moment to be revealed. Emma herself felt a quiet satisfaction, not from proving herself to anyone, but from knowing that her truth had finally been seen and appreciated. She had lived her life with integrity, discipline, and courage, and now those who had underestimated her were seeing just a small part of that reality. The respect and curiosity she received were earned not by shouting or boasting, but simply by living authentically and allowing her experiences to speak for themselves. Her coworkers would leave that day changed in subtle but lasting ways. They would no longer see her as ordinary, nor would they underestimate others so easily. They had witnessed the power of quiet strength and the importance of humility and resilience. Emma's stories and her calm presence had left a lasting impression, showing that courage is not always loud, and that extraordinary lives often exist behind the most ordinary appearances. By the end of the day, Emma had achieved something remarkable without a single grand gesture. She had transformed perception, inspired respect, and shared lessons of strength, resilience, and humility, all while remaining herself, quiet, composed, and unassuming. In the hearts and minds of her coworkers, the ordinary mask had been removed, revealing the extraordinary person Emma had always been. After the day of the reveal, Emma's life at the office subtly but profoundly changed. The colleagues who had once teased her, whispered about her, or dismissed her as ordinary now looked at her with genuine respect. The laughter that had once followed her quiet steps had faded into admiration and curiosity. People no longer assumed they knew her story. Instead, they approached her with thoughtfulness, mindful of the depth and strength they had glimpsed in her that day. The shift in perception was noticeable, but it was also lasting, a reminder that first impressions can often be completely misleading. Emma continued to maintain her quiet, composed demeanor, as she always had. She did not suddenly become loud or overtly dramatic. Her strength was never about attention or recognition. But now, when she spoke, people listened differently. When she offered suggestions in meetings, her words carried added weight. When she walked through the office, there was a subtle change in the way colleagues treated her. A mixture of respect, curiosity, and sometimes even admiration. The ordinary mask she had worn for so long had been replaced, not by arrogance or force, but by the undeniable recognition of her extraordinary character. The change was not just in how others saw her. It was also reflected in Emma herself. She felt a quiet satisfaction, a sense of calm that came from knowing that her truth was finally acknowledged. For years, she had lived her life quietly, confident in her own strength and discipline. She had never sought validation or recognition, but now, seeing the shift in perception around her, she realized that her patience had been rewarded in its own subtle way. She understood the power of timing, of revealing oneself slowly and deliberately, and of allowing others to arrive at their own understanding rather than forcing it upon them. Interactions with her co-workers became more genuine and meaningful. Conversations were no longer filled with teasing or assumptions. Instead, colleagues engaged her with interest, asking thoughtful questions about her experiences, her values, and the lessons she had learned. Some sought guidance or advice, inspired by the discipline and courage she had demonstrated in her life. Others simply listened, quietly absorbing the knowledge that real strength often hides behind calm, ordinary appearances. Emma's presence became a quiet influence, teaching through example rather than words, showing that character and resilience are far more important than superficial traits. The tattoo, once a shocking revelation, had become a symbol of inspiration in the office. People admired it not just for its design, but for what it represented: courage, commitment, and the ability to overcome challenges. Some co-workers would glance at it and reflect, realizing that everyone has their own battles and strengths, often hidden from view. Emma had unknowingly sparked a deeper awareness among her colleagues, a reminder to look beyond the surface, to be cautious of assumptions, and to respect the hidden strengths in those around them. Emma's story also inspired subtle changes in the office culture. Where there had once been casual mockery or idle judgment, there was now greater empathy and understanding. People were more careful with their words, more thoughtful in their observations, and more willing to see beyond appearances. Emma's quiet example had shifted the tone of the workplace, reminding everyone that respect and recognition should not be based solely on visible traits, but on character, actions, and integrity. Outside of work, Emma's confidence in her own identity also strengthened. She no longer felt the need to hide or downplay her experiences. The right audience had seen her truth, and that was enough. She continued to live her life quietly and deliberately, balancing her professional responsibilities with personal growth, exercise, and reflection. Her past in the Marines remained a defining part of who she was, but it no longer needed to remain hidden. The office experience had reinforced the importance of authenticity, patience, and the quiet power of living according to one's principles. Emma's relationships with her co-workers evolved as well. People who had once doubted or underestimated her now sought her out for insight, advice, or simply a meaningful conversation. She became a source of inspiration not because she sought to be, but because her life and character naturally commanded respect. Her calm demeanor, once mistaken for ordinariness, now conveyed confidence and competence. Her colleagues learned that true leadership and influence often come quietly, without flamboyance or ego. The transformation in perception extended beyond admiration. It fostered understanding. People realized that assumptions can be misleading, and that strength, courage, and experience are not always visible at first glance. Emma's life became a living lesson. Appearances are not always a measure of capability, and the quietest people may carry the greatest strength. In this way, her story left a lasting impact, not just on individual co-workers, but on the office as a whole, shaping a culture of respect, awareness, and thoughtful engagement. By the end of the story, Emma's journey had come full circle. The teasing and underestimation she endured had been replaced with acknowledgement and respect. She continued to live quietly and intentionally, confident in her own identity and abilities. Yet, the ordinary mask she once wore had served its purpose perfectly, allowing her to reveal her extraordinary strength at the right moment, leaving a lasting impression on everyone who had underestimated her. In the end, Emma's story was more than about a tattoo or a past in the Marines. It was about patience, authenticity, and the quiet power of resilience. It showed that appearances can be deceiving, that courage often lies hidden, and that respect is earned not through noise or self-promotion, but through integrity, discipline, and living authentically. Emma had transformed perceptions, inspired admiration, and left a profound lesson. The extraordinary can exist within the ordinary, waiting for the right moment to be revealed.